Hi, my name is Kevin Wathey, and this is Win the Day with James Whittaker.
You're listening to Win the Day with James Whittaker.
What we doing live echoes in eternity.
Broadcasting from Los Angeles, California. Here's your host, James Whittaker.
Let's go!
Hey winners, welcome back to Win the Day. The quote for this episode comes from Friedrich Nietzsche and says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Our guest, Kevin Wathey, is an expert in health tech, luxury hospitality, and peak performance. He's a co-founder of Baseline Health, a gamified platform that integrates user data, diagnostics, and DNA to deliver personalized insights and incentivize lasting habit change. Kevin is also developing an 18-acre luxury wellness resort in Costa Rica designed to help people reconnect with themselves and extend their health span through personalized retreats and tech-enabled treatments. With over a decade of consulting for global resorts and as the host of the Inputs Only podcast, Kevin is leading the charge for the intersection of wellness, hospitality, and human potential. In this episode, we're going to talk about the mindset shift that turned Kevin's greatest challenge into his greatest strength, why most people fail at habit change, what questions of self-reflection can transform your life, and how to optimize your environment for peak health and performance. Before we begin, the right bit of information can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. So there's a friend or loved one out there who needs to hear this episode or could use some help to win the day. Share it with them right now. All right, let's win the day with my good mate, Kevin Wathey. Kevin, great to see you, mate. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, to kick things off, is there a story of struggle or success from when you were younger that helped put you on the path that you ultimately went down?
I think you know the one.
I do, and it's such an interesting story. Obviously, a very sad time in your life, but the quote that I picked for this episode, it was very specific, related to your journey. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. And I think as you reveal your own personal journey, that quote's going to become very self-evident.
Very much so. So when I was 16, my mom wanted to inspire my younger sister and I set out to train for and run the Tempe Town Lake Triathlon outside ASU where I grew up. And she trained she completed the race, crossed the finish line, complained of low back pain, and thought she had hurt herself in the race, thought that she tweaked something, tried acupuncture, tried chiropractic, tried a lot of natural remedies. That then led to her going to get an MRI. MRI came back. We find out that she has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, metastasized to every major organ, and she has 3 months to live. I was 16 at the time. Kind of like recently with the fires in LA. I was in disbelief for the first couple of days. You don't realize what's happening in your own backyard. At that time, it didn't dawn on me the gravity or significance of what that meant. She took her almost a month to tell my younger sister and I the diagnosis. And I remember January 2010, she sat my sister and I down and said she was going to outlive the prognosis by a year and spend Christmas with us. And she hit her goal. She accomplished that, and she passed away December 26th, 2010. I was 17. I didn't know where to turn, what to do, or who I was really at the time. Went down a pretty heavy drinking path following. It's all of the steps from there moving forward that actually I now look back on with gratitude, because had I not experienced those things, the loss of my mother, turning to alcohol, and moving on some probably unfavorable, if I was to look at it now, decisions, it's those things that I'm most grateful for because they've shaped who I've become today.
Do you ever have conversations with your mother? Physically not here, but you obviously have memories and everything else.
I wouldn't say conversations, but I have things that remind me of her. As an example, 11/11 was the last time that I saw her, on the day after Christmas when they took her out of the house. And so I see 11/11 almost every day. And I remember her and bring her into my thought when that happens. I have 2 doves on the side of my bedside because there was a dove that flew through her funeral right after I'd read her eulogy. Other things like that. One of the last things I ever said to her was that she would live vicariously through me. And a lot, if not all, of what I'm doing presently is because if this existed 20 years ago, she'd be alive today.
So interesting. Can you give us, I feel like it's going to set the frame for a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So do you want to give us a bit of an insight into some of the cool things you're up to?
For sure. So I'll give you a background of how we got to where we're at today. So after she passed, I played semi-pro hockey for a couple of years. Hockey led me to acting. Acting led me to perform in Asia. Asia led me to learn about yoga and Eastern philosophy and natural medicine. 5 years after she passed, I was in Bali, Indonesia, came out of a yoga class. The sky was a different shade of blue. The trees were greener. I could smell differently. And I made eye contact with my vocal production coach because I was there performing. And I saw my mom in her and broke. And that was the first time, almost to the day, 5 years after she had passed, that I allowed myself to grieve. That moment was this breaking, like removing of a veil, or like breaking something inside of me open and allowing myself to express again. Because up to that point, I mean, you go from that to hockey on a very high level, and it's like, shut the fuck up and play. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have no emotion in a way. I came back to the States. I said, where do I meet more people like that? Got my yoga certification, started teaching full time because I knew the anatomy and physiology piece. And so it was a shoe, and I just didn't necessarily know the philosophical piece of it. Took a summer internship after graduating at Hyatt Hotels. I was a summer pool boy. I worked at the pool, was really good at it because I like people and I'm good with people. Got on full time after a year, was there for 2 years, and then got on their brand development team and helped them open and develop new properties. I was 24. I wanted to build out their wellness footprint, so to speak. And I put together a proposal that I presented to the CEO, CFO, VP of the Americas. And I said, this is how I want to build out an external-facing guest program, an internal-facing employee program. And they looked at me like I was nuts. I reflect back on, I think it was because I was so young, and I still am today a little bit, just like, fuck it, let's figure it out.
Yeah. They knew you was the pool boy as well, rather than who you were.
That's true. Although I was no longer the pool boy at this point. They knew that was a couple of years prior. And they said, wellness will never be big enough to warrant a corporate partnership. And I said, I see the world very differently. So I started a consultancy helping boutique resorts build out their wellness footprint. Did that up until really the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I realized that I'd been building for everyone else's brand other than my own. And I wanted to get into ownership, and I wanted to do something that was essentially solving the problem that I was trying to solve for all these resorts I was consulting for, which is hospitality is a very qualitative experience. You go somewhere, you feel good, you go back home, you do the same thing that warrants the vacation in the first place. But the thought was, what if we are able to quantitatively show improvement over time in a qualitative environment? So we set a baseline. You do a genetic sequence, a full genome sequence. You do a blood panel, a microbiome panel, and a metabolic panel. And now we've got your baseline. Now, everything that you do on property increases or decreases, positively or negatively affects that baseline. And when you come back and retest, we now have something to compare and contrast against. I thought this was a great idea. I start talking to friends. They're like, oh, this is really cool. You're thinking too small. I'm like, what? I'm saying I'm going to buy a resort, build this technology, and they're like, yeah. The resort is one thing, and you're solving a use case for you. That's great. But what if you then take this tech that you're building and turn it into a use case that sits in your pocket on your phone, and now it's accessible to everyone, and the elite tier is able to then go to this resort and go to this place. So it turned into concurrently building two startups. Effectively, Velara, which is the resort, which means vitality divinely guided, which is what the name means, and then Baseline, which is the health tech.
So interesting. I think that's just such a cool concept. What about the wearable tech that you use today? Like, what do you use to track just you personally in terms of performance, health optimization, anything like that?
Currently Garmin. So I used Whoop for a long time. Really enjoyed Whoop, but when I started training, I did an ultra marathon 2 years ago, did a triathlon, did a couple other races, and I wanted to see, I wanted to track more things in real time, heart rate, and really what zone I was in, because I was running a lot, and that was like the number one KPI, so to speak, that I was looking for. That was why I switched, and I think it's more accurate, but everyone has their own.
Have you tried things like the Oura ring as well?
I haven't. I have a horror story with a ring. I was in Bogota, Colombia. This is 10 years ago. And we were at a bar. I was wearing a ring that I bought on that trip in Bali, and I played the bongos with the band, and the ring flattened to my finger and had to be cut off.
Oh my God.
And so I haven't worn rings
Fair enough.
for a while.
Good luck explaining that one to your future wife as
Yeah,
well.
we'll get a tattoo.
There's a lot of people talking about things like wearable tech and all that. And the first time I ever tried to wear one, it was to track my sleep. This was many, many years ago. And I woke up and I looked at the data and I was like, just to see, I was very curious as to see what happened. And it said that I had a really bad sleep. And I was like, oh, wow, I actually felt pretty good. So then I felt miserable as a result of what it told me. And then the next day I tried it again and it said I had a really good sleep, but I felt crap anyway because I felt like I had a bad sleep. So it seemed like to me it was lose-lose. Someone asked me recently about what I talk about on the podcast. Are there things in life that you just shouldn't be optimizing for in terms of just enjoying the ride and whatever things happen, go with the flow a little bit more? And I think it's a really valid point. So what are some things in your life that you just flat out refuse to sort of optimize?
I might be the wrong person to ask this question. I've worked to optimize I've worked to optimize everything in my life, almost so much so that it detracts from interpersonal relationships because I'll go into something, I'm saying this isn't the best use of my time. I'm going to go do this. That doesn't work great in a relationship sometimes. So what I had done a few years ago is I put together a thing called a personal productivity tracker that had the day. It had all the bullet points of what I accomplished or did that day. It had a creativity score. So how many hours have I done towards a creative effort? What my sleep score, my strain score, and then a quantitative scoring of my day, -2 to +2, which I got from Jim Collins. And then I had 6 habits that I tracked. Time in sauna, time in cold, and then I was learning Spanish, so time conversing in Spanish. And I tracked that for, this is I probably have over 4.5, 5 years of data for that. And I, a couple months ago, stopped using it. And one of the reasons was because I recognized that I was doing things to do them rather than because I enjoyed doing them. And I talk a lot on this inputs only philosophy, this inputs only approach. And I like having an end point, saying I'm going to do this thing because I know this is where I'm going to get to. Well, the thing is, if I'm pointing to somewhere where I want to get to, and the reason I want to get there is because of something that I feel I lack today, that means I'm not moving in alignment. That means I'm moving towards scarcity. I'm moving towards lack of something. The inputs only philosophy is that if you focus on what you can do today, what's the input you can do today, and how are you aligned in that? If I come here and I get lit up by this podcast with you, that's in alignment. If I did that every single day in alignment, I would get somewhere, whether I set out to get somewhere or not, but it would be an aligned outcome. And so I've tried to, as much as I'm presently thinking about the problem, but I've tried to shift away from having this need to get somewhere philosophy to what are the things I can do every single day, concurrently, consecutively, and consistently that will get me somewhere, which without having to know what the destination is. I got one of the things that my mom, I credit it to her, but I think it was my own distillation over the years, was that intensity is great for a moment in time, but consistency is what gets you across the line. And in my life, there have been a lot of times where I'm really good at going from 0 to 90. That last 10%, I'm like, I'm not interested anymore. I'm going to drop off and go do this thing. It's why I've lived so many lives, so to speak. But the current life phase that I'm in is that I want to eke out that last 10%. And I want to see something through to the point where it becomes extraordinary, not just good or great.
So you're someone who's, you would say, pretty super analytical. Is that fair?
To an extent, because I know there are people who are much more analytical than I. Yeah. I have a couple on the team that I thought I was, and then they go off on a tangent. I'm analytical, but I lead with my gut.
I think it's interesting when you look at data and it says that you should be feeling not optimal today, the mindset shift of how do you do that? So, I've got a few years on you. I've got 2 young kids. You don't. So it's very hard for me to wake up and be like, wow, I feel like I have 100% energy. It's basically never happened. So I have to follow a process. I have a very specific process that I follow. And regardless of how I feel, I can still keep my output high because I'm willing myself to feel incredible or to keep my output high no matter what's going on. And the challenge that I have with some of the data, unless you're strong enough to be able to will the outcomes even when it tells you the otherwise, I feel like that is not emphasized as much as it should.
What do you mean by that?
So if you wake up and any of the metrics that you use to track energy, sleep, hydration, or just anything really about how you should be feeling, I guess sleep is a big one, because if you wake up and it says you had a lousy sleep, that's the first thing about being like, cool, I'm going to identify as being tired today. And if you identify as someone who's being tired, your output's going to be low. Instead of identifying as I'm going to win the day, irrespective of what happened yesterday, how I feel, or how daunting tomorrow may seem, then I'm going to get up, follow a simple process, and keep my output high no matter what. So you don't need the data. Now, I can also recognize that having the data enables you to change your inputs, which can improve it, which means that your highs should theoretically be higher anyway over time. So that's the stuff that I always sort of battle with, especially when historically the wearable tech data has not been accurate. Often it's consistent, but not necessarily accurate going back a long time ago. I'm not someone who uses a lot of wearable tech, and I certainly know a lot of people like our mutual friend Michael Bruce, who talks a lot about how they're getting a lot better these days, but that's sort of the philosophy through I view it all.
So the difference for me is balancing the macro rather than the micro. And I think if you are attached to checking whatever wearable device that you have is the first thing that you do in the morning, the last thing you do before you go to sleep, you're approaching it through a lens that will ultimately lead to failure. If you are approaching it through the lens of saying, this is going to track me 24/7, 365, and it's going to give me trend lines over time, because you go to the gym for a day is a great example, but you go to the gym for a day, you don't see results. You go to the gym for a week, you don't see results. You go to the gym for a month, you don't see results, but you go for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, you start to see things change. If I was saying, let's do your blood work today and tomorrow, great. It's not going to change much. There's not going to be much that's going to show you. But if you do every 3 months or every 6 months, now you're starting to see trends over time. And that's actually where you get the most important data. As an example with Baseline. Baseline gives you 3 daily challenges that cannot be self-reported, meaning you cannot check them off. They're linked to a wearable. That is informed by your biology, meaning the more data that you give it, the more accurate it becomes. So you do a full genetic test, full genetic sequence. You do a blood test, biome test, and a metabolic panel. You can do one and plug it in, and it's going to start to give you tailored insights based on the one. But the key here is that it's harmonized data, not aggregate data. So what we see in the market is there's a lot of companies that are saying, let's take as many tests as we can and put them into one folder and then give you a 3,000-page PDF folder. Great, but unless you're a PhD, you probably don't have a clue what that means. Harmonized data, on the other hand, is that all of these things are in one folder and they're talking to each other. So how do your genes influence your blood? How does your blood influence your biome? How does your biome influence your sleep? And how do we see the full 360 picture of your health is really what we're trying to do, are doing with Baseline. And the reason I bring up the challenges is because if you have 1 day or 7 days, the score doesn't change much. But it's when you see that streak consistently growing over time, that is when you actually get, it's like a credit score. You have a positive repayment history for 10 years. It weighs much heavier than if you just had 1 month of repayment history.
I see with my daily journal entry, like 1,600, whatever it is, consecutive daily journal entries right now. The goal is just not to break the chain. It's exactly what Jerry Seinfeld spoke about when he was writing all his comedy. Just every day, it's just do the reps. The goal is not to write amazing comedy. The goal is not to break the chain.
Yeah, he's curating the muscle to continue to do the thing. Yeah. And that's, the focus is lifestyle and behavior, not an injectable or ingestible, which is a very divergent path from where we're seeing Western society go. It's saying we need to solve a problem in a way that's acute. We're solving a chronic problem in an acute way, which is the wrong way to look at the problem. The problem is that we need to change our lifestyle and behavior consistently, because that's what's going to get rid of the chronic disease, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's such an important distinction, the way that you framed that there. And I can see that people who might be wearing some type of wearable tech but not getting great outcomes, clearly the input that you use should lead to a better outcome. So you need to either reframe the way you're using it. There are some that do things like tracking your steps, and I love that just as a simple goal for people to get like 10,000 steps a day or anything like that, which I feel like is really interesting. We'll be back with the show shortly. I've got a quick question for you. Are you living up to your potential? It's a question that shapes your family, your business, and your overall happiness every single day. That's why I'm excited to introduce the Win the Day quiz. Head over to winthedayquiz.com right now, answer a few thought-provoking questions, and you'll instantly discover how well you're performing relative to your true potential. And here's the exciting part for our Win the Day family. As a fan of the show, you'll receive a personalized and absolutely free action plan to help you win the day every day. Now, just imagine how transformational the results will be when you consistently show up as the best version of yourself in every aspect of your life. Don't miss out. Take the Win the Day quiz now by visiting winthedayquiz.com or click the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the show. I want to take it back to a couple of things that you had mentioned earlier in your story. You mentioned there that you had the moment where you saw your mother for the first time in this other person, and that led to a big breakthrough for you. How did that then shape the way that you showed up every day after that?
I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. I don't think it was a light switch moment. I think it was a continual progression and expansion from that being a tipping point. And leading up to that moment, I was almost at the beck and call of like letting the flow of life take me wherever with no real roots and no real, I guess, desire to create or make anything. I've always known in my gut that I was put here for a purpose and that there's something that I am meant to create that in a way is bigger than myself. I've known that full-heartedly my whole life. Did I let that disappear for a while? Yes. And I think that a lot of people talk about intuition. I think everyone has one, but it's, again, like Jerry Seinfeld, it's a muscle that you need to consistently cultivate. Otherwise, it weakens over time. And when I saw her, Micah Espinoza, my vocal production coach from ASU, when I saw her in that and that happened, it was almost this shift. It was like a wake-up call. It was like, the fuck are you doing? You're taking this only life that you've been given for granted. You have the ability to do something with your life if you choose to show up for yourself. And I would say prior to that, I wasn't showing up for myself. I was just showing up wherever that took me. And then the shift, in a way, now that I think about it, is showing up with a clearly defined set of a moral framework and value-based framework, rather than just saying, whatever happens, it happens.
Is there an enduring lesson from your mum's life or through her passing that you think about a lot?
Probably her favorite song is I Hope You Dance. I have 2 tattoos. One of them is I Hope You Dance in her handwriting, that her best friend was an artist, and we went through my baby books and she pulled out each individual letter and strung it, because we never saw I Hope You Dance written in anything in her handwriting. And so we strung it together. I got it tattooed on my shoulder, or on my clavicle. And the lesson in that, it's a line in the song too, is like, when you get the chance, I hope you, rather than sit it out, I hope you dance. And I view that through the lens of life's going to challenge you. Things are going to come up. There is always the choice to take the sidelines or to push forward. How you show up is really the only thing that you do control. Stubbornly or not stubbornly, I can't find a moment in my life where I chose not to show up.
Incredible. I love that. You mentioned there things like yoga and some of the other things that you do that sort of helped you learn more about the power of self and your role in the universe and getting in the right mindset and all of those different things. I'm curious, out of all the things you tried when you were in Asia and traveling around the world and meeting a whole bunch of different people, were there some things that you thought were going to work that really didn't work?
Everything serves its purpose. Like, I don't practice much yoga anymore. Not because I don't want to, but I've just been in a much more aggressive mindset maybe, and CrossFit does the trick for me right now. But at the time, there isn't something that specifically comes to mind as a didn't work, or maybe it didn't work as well right then. Yoga was great at the time because it gave me an opportunity to sit with myself, which is not something that I had ever done. I was still today always am moving from one thing to the next without taking a moment for myself to say, like, how do I actually feel about this thing? I have very small windows in my day where I intentionally do that today. Back then I was in Bali and I was like, this was whole days dedicated to self-reflection, and weeks dedicated to self-reflection and learning about the yogic philosophies and learning about the self through the yogic philosophies. The one thing I will say that's becoming more and more prevalent in society today is this journey towards plant medicine. I used to be really called to it years ago, and I think it was more when I was searching for myself. I never ended up sitting or going on a trip like that. What I've come to realize is that there are many ways to get to the same outcome. One could be the stairs, one could be an elevator, and one could be the wrong direction. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think there's a what's most in alignment with you. I was having a conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and she said that a very similar thing. She said that there's multiple paths towards every outcome, but the one that you choose determines if you live on your highest timeline or not. And that, like, highest timeline concept stuck with me. It's like we have all of these, in a way, predetermined paths, so I think. But every choice that you make determines which path you're shifting towards. And again, back to inputs, if you're focusing always on the things that are in alignment today, you're always shifting towards that, in my belief, highest timeline.
I heard you describe in another podcast that you're searching for certainty and significance as a result of things that you had gone through in your life. Have you defined that as a specific milestone or achievement or anything like that? In terms of like what that translates into something when you can say, finally, I've hit that, I've realized that.
So the certainty and significance piece came from Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins. I was a Tony Platinum partner for a year. If anyone listening or watching has been to Date with Destiny, one of the things that you go through are the 6 human needs. The vast majority of people that have never done any type of personal or professional development work sit with certainty and significance. I need to feel that I'm important, and I need to be certain that I'm important, which are almost conflicting in a way. What I've deconstructed from myself is that the significance piece comes from the belief that I felt like I lost something when I lost my mom. Because in my mind at the time, I felt like that was like not owned her, but like she was part of something that I was communally a part of. And when I lost her, I lost a chunk of it. Well, it wasn't that I lost her, she just passed. That reframe takes away the fact that I need to be significant in that container, so to speak. The challenge is that then becomes, in a way, your baseline. And so I move towards this contribution and growth desire, but when push comes to shove, you end up moving back to where you feel most comfortable, which has notoriously for me been certainty and significance. So I'm on the tightrope sometimes back and forth, and I can catch myself because I've become more aware of it now, saying, okay, I'm making this decision because I believe this will bring me some type of significance or some type of certainty. But the times that I felt most fulfilled in my life are the times when I pushed that aside and said, I don't care or know what this is going to get me, but it feels right. And I'm contributing to something in a bigger, better way than myself.
I wonder if you feel that at all obviously you're involved in some incredible high-level projects at the moment, but as your influence grows and the work that you're doing has more of an impact, you're connecting with more and more influential relationships, people who are at the absolute top of their game doing equally disruptive things in their respective industries. Do you feel like you achieve some of that certainty and significance as your relationships start to line up and enable you to have that impact as well?
I think so, yes, but I don't think that's not the reason I'm going into the relationships, which is why it satisfies that need. If I was going into it saying I need to be friends with this person because it's going to bring me significance and I'm going to be important, wrong.
And I know straight away you're not that person.
And I think that's why maybe me 5 years ago, I would have been like, hey, guess who I know? This, you know?
They're the ones in conversations who talk about themselves so much as well. You know, when you go on a dinner party or at some event and someone that you're chatting to for 10 minutes, all they do is just talk about themselves. They don't ask a single question. And at the end of it, they walk away and you're like, what a waste. You just have no interest in continuing a relationship like that. But when you and I catch up, It's always, and my favorite people in the world, it's always those conversations around what are you up to and how can I help? And I think it's just such a brilliant way to have a friendship with people that can lead to anything. You're there for the connection, but that just leads to incredible things as a result.
I mean, I think that, and also what can I learn? And if you approach every single time we talk, whether it was 2 days in a row or 2 months apart or 2 years apart, I feel like we both approach the conversation through the lens of like, A, how can I help? But B, what can I learn in this? And then it becomes a conversation that's a ping pong match rather than someone spouting off at the other.
Yeah, for sure. And I love your whole philosophy around inputs only. As part of that, are there any particular questions that you ask yourself on a daily basis or just as you go through life, maybe as like an annual thing? Like I'm just curious as to what questions you feel like go through your mind or that you feel compelled to ask yourself on an ongoing basis.
The biggest one revolves around energy. So what either added or subtracted from my energy? And you can do that in the day to day. You can do that in the week to week, month to month, or year to year. And you can score that and then quantify that. So not to go back to an analytical way, but you can then say, here are all the things on my calendar that lit me up. Here are all the things on my calendar that detracted from me. What if I lived in a perpetual state where everything that I was doing was in some way propelling me towards my highest self, my highest timeline? It's installing a system of reflection. Is every month, sit down, okay, what lit me up? What didn't? What can I reflect on? What has changed for the better or worse? And how have I been compliant in creating the conditions that I say I want and often say I don't want, but I'm actively creating both in my life?
Yeah. The more ownership you have over the situation, the more accountability you have to be able to change it. It's so
Correct.
important.
That, and then the caveat that you don't technically own or are in control of really anything.
Yeah.
And that surrender is something that removes the need for certainty and significance because you're allowing yourself to move forward with a value-based approach without needing to get somewhere in order to prove yourself. I think of it through the kind of analogy, a river without banks ceases to flow. We need the guardrails. We need here's my values on this side, here's my ethics on this side. If we have these two pieces, and I say, I'm going to jump in and the stream's taking me somewhere, now you're in alignment and now you're moving towards something that you might not, most likely don't know what it's going to be, but you know that you're trending in the right trajectory.
Mm. For someone who is in a rut and you were sitting down with them and they said, look, I'm really struggling right now. Maybe I'm feeling a bit of a negative energy. I don't know what I'm called for. I'm not in a great space in terms of a social circle. What would you recommend in terms of a course of action to get someone out of a rut?
Move. Move to a new city. Move your body physically. Move things around in your house and get a new environment. Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot, and there's a lot of talk on epigenetics, which is basically the part that's turned on in a cell. And the environment shapes the gene. So if you're in a place that you feel stagnant, you can, we could shift these chairs around. It's a new energy. We could go do this in another building, new energy. We could do this in another city, new energy. Some of the biggest breakthroughs and impactful moments in my life have come from some type of travel or hospitality. And the reason I say both, travel, because when you experience something new, you can never go back to believing it a different way because it's a new experience, especially with culture. And then with hospitality, because it's a shared experience of sorts. And not to go off topic, but one of the things that really drew me into hospitality initially was, like I said, when I lost my mom, I felt like I lost something. I felt like I lost home in a way. Hospitality for me is a way to create spaces where people can go to find home, because home isn't a place, it's a state within. If you feel like you're in a rut and you feel like you've lost that safe place, that spot within you that you're certain of, that you know, this is me, get up, go outside, go for a run. If you're in a place physically, move. And there's a lot of ways to take that, but that's always been something that's paid dividends for me.
So good. All of your work in luxury hospitality, is there one particular example of hospitality you've seen that was just so far above and beyond that you still think about or that you were involved in personally?
The first thing that came to mind is the ability to preemptively take care of someone before they even know their needs are there. That looks like Four Seasons greeting you by name before you check in. That, and other properties do this, Four Seasons just does it really well. That looks like understanding what someone's going through and being able to meet them at that moment. It's the intangibles that you don't think about when you're creating your business plan that actually empower other people to create an interpersonal, deep connection. There's a really good book, but it talks about an experience where they go to this restaurant. There's a 15-course meal. Waiter overhears the two people conversing, saying, "Don't you remember in New York when we first met, we didn't even have enough money to eat, so you took me on our first date to get a hot dog at this little like hot dog cart in the middle of Central Park." On their fourth course, the waiter leaves the restaurant, buys a hot dog, brings it back, cuts it up, plates it, and puts it in front of them for their like fifth course or something like that. I get chills thinking about something like that, because what it means is that they're not following a book. They're following the desire to care for others so they can be their best. When you adopt that as a philosophy, hospitality changes, because it's no longer about I need to check a box. It's about how can I show up for you in a way that allows you to be the best fucking possible person that you can and thrive. Hands down, that's hospitality to me.
I think about some of the times when I've had the worst experiences, because they're quite memorable too. And it's when one person who is so stuck in the bureaucracy that they're in can't do something simple. Like I had a flight about a year ago. It was like a 6 a.m. flight, and the person was for like an event, and the people who booked it spelt my email address wrong. So I never got the confirmation to go in there and check in. And I got to the airport at 6:05. I've got TSA pre-check and all of those different things, just carry on luggage. I'm in seat 1A on this flight. And I was like, oh, my boarding pass isn't available. It says go to the desk. So I went to the desk, and they're like, I think the flight was at 6 a.m. and I got there at 5:05. So plenty of time. I could make it through in 5 minutes being carry on and TSA pre-check. And she's like, you hadn't checked it online, so we have deplaned you. I was like, what are you talking about? And she refused to do anything. And I'm like, there has to be something that you can do. It took about 20 minutes with her. Eventually, she's like, well, go and talk to someone else. I'll let you through security, but here's an economy ticket for a flight 4 hours later. I'm like, the event is happening. I need to be on this flight. Like, this is the absolute essential thing. The non-negotiable is that I need to be on this plane. I make it to the gate before the previous plane is even there, standing around. They're telling me that I'm so late and all of those different things. It's when you scale a business, yes, you must have a standard way of doing things. McDonald's, classic example, but I feel like there needs to be, a lot of people talk about Disney's great skill being the ability to create magic experiences when they see people. Maybe it's their birthday, or like the restaurant example that you just mentioned there. I love processes, of course, to scale, but you must empower every individual to be able to break the rules, to break the mold, to do an incredible gesture that someone will remember for the rest of their life.
The empowerment is the key word. And as you follow a rule book, people feel disempowered in order to make decisions for themselves on behalf of a company. And if that's the way that you're trying to grow and scale something, great, it's ones and zeros, and you're going to have your MBA come in and drive the share price up and then sell everything off and on to the next. But that doesn't build a business that allows people to feel taken care of. And it doesn't build a business that allows you to remember the experience that you had, or remember what someone was able to do to go out of their way to make sure that you felt taken care of. And I think you hit nail on the head. Is empowerment is when we get out of the way and say, it's not about me. It's about what can we do communally, and how can I empower you to make the best decision in that moment for the person, even when I'm not there. That's where you start to create magic.
My wife took me to Disney about 10 years ago, just the two of us for my birthday. They gave me a special badge or something that said it was my birthday. About 1 million people said happy birthday. It was legitimately one of the best days of my entire life. Then we went back a few years ago. It was just after COVID. We were there with our kids, and we went up to go and buy like an ice cream, and they're like, oh, you need to order that on the app. And I was like, we don't have the app. And they're like, well, you got to order it through the app. So we downloaded the app, and they said it will be ready in 45 minutes. And I'm like, we want that ice cream right there, and you can't go and give us that. two very different stories. And I think when you do have an incredible experience, you are then much more forgiving when things don't go perfectly. You're much more willing to have a conversation with those people to resolve any issues that you do have, rather than going and leaving a TripAdvisor review or a Yelp review. Just that personal connection, going above and beyond, creates that emotional connection that enables everything magic to go from there. It's just a great foundation for anything.
Because it's all about perception too. Rory Sutherland has a really good example. He was consulting for the train system in the UK, and everyone was complaining the trains were too slow. And I don't know the specifics, so don't quote me on it, but apparently they put together a business plan of what it would cost in order to redo the entire train system, and it was way out of budget. So he goes, you don't need to redo the trains, you just need to hire better looking waitresses. And he goes, complaints dropped overnight. And you're changing the perception of the individual because you're caring for a need they didn't know they had. And that's a very kind of physical.
Sounds like a Richard Branson type strategy.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. I like to try and think of things outside the box through the lens of what can we do that hasn't been done in a way that decreases friction on the end consumer, but gives them an experience they couldn't have had otherwise, which is why the harmonization of health data is so important. Doesn't exist.
What are the most essential parts of your daily routine? I know you travel a ton and everything else. When you are at home, what are the or even when you're traveling, are there some things that you do no matter what?
Consistent wake time and movement in the morning. A challenging thing can be travel when you don't get to sleep at your normal time, and then you still need to wake up and you have that decreased sleep window. But a consistent wake time, and then you get moving shortly after waking up. Doesn't matter how little sleep I got, it sets my day up for success. Pretty simple. Like, I just need to get a sweat in some way. I mean, you see me when we do coffees early in the morning. I come like in the gym clothes, and I'm still dripping. As long as I get that in, I'm pretty good to go.
Yeah. And I love with our coffees, we just walk around and
Coffee and walk.
I think it's perfect. How can people stay motivated with their health even when they feel that their motivation is gone?
I come back to move again because I don't think motivation is the right metric to score yourself off of. I think it's discipline, because there are days that every single person is not motivated to do the thing they know they should. We all know what we must do. Most of us choose not to. If instead of saying I need to be motivated to do this thing, what would it be like to commit to yourself to say, I'm going to do this thing no matter how I feel, and the level of trust and resourcefulness that builds within you when you say, I don't care how I feel, I'm going to show up for myself anyway. I'd say set something and remain consistent to it. And that's a hack for life.
And people misunderstand the goal. The goal is not to go in there and do the best workout you've ever done. The goal is just to walk through the door and be there. Once you're there, the next process will take care of itself.
I used to injure myself a lot because no matter how I felt that I needed to give what I thought my 100% was. And I have this ideal of, if I am healthy and everything is great, my 100% is this. But on days that you're underslept, if you give that 100%, you will hurt yourself and you'll be out for longer. That's how, in a way, I broke my leg. That's how I have all these other injuries in the past. It's great for when you want to go run an ultra marathon and like you got to find a new gear to push yourself into. But again, that's great. That's great for a moment in time. That's not going to get you across the line. You don't do that your whole life. What can I commit to where I can show up consistently, and I can do that every single day? Even if I'm sick, you can wake up and get 20 minutes of some type of sweat in. If I don't feel good, go sit in a sauna. If I do feel good, go for a run, go to the gym, have some type of routine that you commit to no matter what. Again, builds trust within yourself and you'll feel more resourceful and resilient because of it.
I noticed when I was doing CrossFit a lot, being tired and being late were the biggest killers, because when you're tired, you just, physically you're just not in great shape. You're just feeling very sluggish about every single aspect of what goes on. And when you're late, you can miss out on things like some mobility stuff at the start that might activate your muscles a bit better to get, or warm-up sets to get you ready to go. I was in that thing where it was like every 4 to 5 months I was getting injured, then you'd have a month or two off, and it was brutal. You're always going back to square one. And now I think it's been about almost 3 years of just consistent physical fitness that I've had now, which is just incredible. It's mainly the strength stuff that I'm doing rather than I don't do anywhere near as much cardio as I used to do. But I walked in there with that whole tenet of being first, do no harm. Like I walk in, the first goal is not to get injured. So doing stuff like the mobility work that I don't love, I just do it because it's part of the process. Like you mentioned, I just go in and just get that done. It's just part of, if I walk in the gym, that's what happens. I go straight to the mobility room to go and do that. And then adding in those other things, and it just makes it so much better for everything else. And then you enjoy the benefits of that consistency 3 years later.
Yeah. It's a longevity game.
Yeah. And how much of a role do genes play in how someone's health and happiness unfolds? And are we in a position to really outwork our genes with what you're seeing in terms of the tech data?
What I believe right now, what I've seen is about 80-20. So yes, there are predispositions that can lead you towards a specific outcome, but you have far more control epigenetically and behaviorally than the world wants to lead you on to believe. There is this kind of victim mentality where it's, oh, I have this MTFRR gene or something that fucks me because of this. But I don't subscribe to that. And I think this also plays a role in how things are interpreted within the body, because if environment shapes the gene and then your mind dictates how you're approaching the environment, you're actually thinking yourself into sickness or into health. That's a challenging piece for a lot of people, because if mindset is the number one killer in a way, and there's no type of standardized mindset training or education other than people going through trials and tribulations and having to find their way through, you get people who on one side have chosen to become the victor of circumstance and others who become the victim. Well, this is much easier to choose, and that's why we see so much depression in the world today. I guess in a roundabout way to summarize that, you're in control. It's the things like committing to small routines that actually allow you to build resilience within yourself that will dictate how you show up everywhere else and will actually influence your biomarkers as well.
That self-talk is such a big piece of the puzzle.
You see it with athletes too. Like there's a video of Ronaldo, of close-up of on him right before he kicks a penalty kick in the World Cup. And you see him repeating to himself, saying like, this is normal for you, you're a winner. And he's talking himself through that he's going to make the goal, and you know that, and then you see the goal, he's like, oh shit, what do I do? And you recognize the different mental states that the people are approaching it from, and you recognize why one is one of the best in the world and the other one you don't know the name of.
Yeah, it is so interesting. I feel like even when you have been burdened by something very difficult in your life, maybe it's a medical challenge, maybe it's the loss of a loved one, there's so many different things that you can complain about in life. But if you go and look at the people who succeed, they've succeeded in spite those things. And especially with social media, where people can watch events that can make it more traumatic through the exposure they have to the replays of watching these events and all the news surrounding it, it can be more traumatic than people who actually went through the events to begin with. But a lot of people can't help but draw themselves into all of those negative things. Like, it's so important to control everything that you're exposed to, like your environment being the food you eat, the music you listen to, the shows you watch, the social media you consume, the story you tell yourself, all of those different things.
I don't think it's in spite of. I think it's a reframing because of. Something I learned in the Tony world was things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And if you truly believe that, you could be having the worst day, week, month, year, decade of your life. But if you believe it's happening for you and that it's protecting and propelling you towards a place that's meant for you, then the whole dynamic shifts.
I noticed you interviewed Dr. John Demartini. I was listening to that earlier today. Isn't he just an incredible guy? We had him on the podcast recently, and he is just an incredible amount of knowledge, that guy.
So the very first time, he was one of the most interesting people. Like he was on the short list of someone I wanted to interview. And so he lives on a ship called the World. I didn't know this going into the interview. And so we zoomed in, I get him on, I asked him a couple questions, and I was like, somehow it came up like, what's your day-to-day life look like? Where do you live? He goes, I live on the World. And I said, excuse me? He goes, yeah, I live on the World. I go, yeah, but like, where in the world do you live? And it was this weird back and forth. And he goes, oh no, it's a boat, like a cruise ship that I live on that travels all around. It's called the World. I go, oh. And as that happened, internet goes out. His internet. They were in a storm off the coast of Madagascar.
First world problems.
Yeah, literally. So internet goes out. I don't hear from the guy for like 2 hours. And I'm like, my one chance to interview this guy, great. And then he texts me, so sorry, we'll reschedule and get this back on. But it was one of those funny things that you have this idea of like, I've prepped so much for this. These are the questions I want to ask. This is where I want it to go. Internet goes out right after feeling like you made a dumb comment. And I'm like, well, there goes that shot.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. I even just researching for the interview that I did with him, he actually has a song. I've mentioned it in my newsletter before. It's called John's Song, the Butterfly version from John D. Martini. And I think Inspired is the artist that he's collaborated with. It is brilliant. It's just the best way to start the day. I used to listen to something called the Jim Rohn Smooth Mix. It was just brilliant. It's like a lot of people feel that some of these personal development seminars can be very dry, but when it's been mixed and produced with some music in the background, I play it with my kids on the way to school in the morning. It's just the best way to keep reinforcing all of these different things.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And now you see what these events are turning into today, and they're more spectacle than anything else.
Exactly. Before we go into the rocket round, is there anything that you want to mention in terms of the work that you're doing today that people should be aware of, or the type of people that you're looking for who might be interested?
Focus on hybrid athletes right now for Baseline. So if you're interested or if you feel you fit that, get baseline.com. Costa Rica is slated to grand open January 2027. So we got a bit of time there, but we're already selling condominiums and residences on the property.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, the last question before that rocket round, on your best day, what's an affirmation that you would write on a flashcard to show yourself on your worst day?
They don't know how the story ends.
Love that. Very cool. Well, let's now move to the rocket round. 10 questions for some quick answers. You up for this one, Kevin?
Hit me.
Number 1, what quote inspires you the most?
Ooh, shoot. I have so many quotes and none of them are coming straight to my head
you
right
can
now.
take a moment to think about it. I love a good quote as well. So, feel free to take as long as you like.
First thing that came to mind is what you think you become.
So powerful. Number 2, morning coffee or evening wine?
Coffee.
Number 3, what's one bit of advice you would give your 18-year-old self?
Don't change anything.
Number 4, what book do you gift the most or that contributed most to the mindset you have today?
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho or The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Well, Michael Singer's great too, isn't he? Any particular lessons from those 2 books or what it did in terms of how it shifted your mindset?
That it doesn't matter what's happening outside of oneself. It's about how you control the internal state that matters.
Number 5, was there a vulnerability you once hid within that became your superpower?
These are good rocket round questions. My mind went to compartmentalization. I, in the face of challenging times and adversity, am able to put that aside and respond and react very quickly. I've always looked at that as a negative because it shuts off my ability to emote in a way. And I want to be an emotional person, which is often very challenging for me, but it's teed me up for a lot of, like, there's certain things that have happened. We talked a little bit before very recently that, like, I don't know anyone else that would have been able to pull it off in the way that I did.
Awesome. Number 6, what's one thing you've learned about failure?
It's only failure if you quit.
Number 7, if you could sit on a park bench and have a conversation with someone alive or dead, who would it be?
First person that came to mind was Richard Branson. I think the more now in my current phase of life, I would probably say my mom.
Number 8, what tool or resource best helps you run your life or your business?
Notion or some type of coded automation software.
Like what? What type of, what would that be?
Either a custom automation code that you make or something that integrates everything together like Zapier or Make.
Number 9, share one thing on your bucket list.
I've ticked a lot of them off over the past couple of years. One of them was a 100-mile ultra that I did at the end of 2023.
Where was that?
I was outside Texas. That was wild.
Yeah.
It's a rocket round. Have time for a story.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
For my 30th birthday in 2023, wanted to run the same triathlon my mom ran that led to her diagnosis. And so Tempe Town Lake Triathlon, got all my friends from when I was a kid that knew her to come out and hold signs, say, this is for Dee Dee. And it was my first race, kind of like that I ever ran. I complete it. I go on this race spree and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a Spartan 2 weeks later. I do the Ultra Spartan in Big Bear 2 weeks later. Wild experience. 2 weeks after that, I ran the San Diego Marathon. And then I got a call from a friend and he goes, hey, we're doing this race as our Misogi which is this like year-defining event. And I was like, cool, sign me up, not knowing what it was. The next day, I have a training plan and a race bib for a 100-mile ultra in Brazos Bend, Texas for December 2nd or December 3rd, 2023. I was working in Europe for all of September, October, November. And so I was literally flying from Europe back to the States for this race on the beginning of December. The benefit of that was that I got to run, I was like running 60, 70 miles a week, and I was in a different city. So I got to see so much of Europe by foot, which was incredible. The night before I'm supposed to fly back, I get a call from my friend who's running it saying, have you seen your email? I said, no, what? It's midnight in London right now. What? He goes, the race has been canceled. This is Tuesday. The race is Friday. I'm like, I've been training for 4.5, 5 months for this race. Now you're saying it's canceled? Do I just stay, like spend Christmas over here? What do I do? He goes, no. Fly out. We'll figure something out. From the time I took off to the time that I landed in Texas, they had scheduled and created their own called Run Your Race, 1 to 100. It was an unsanctioned ad hoc race, fully self-supported. So we literally, the day before, I went to Ralph's, got $200 of groceries, pulled it up on the bed of their truck and like laid it out for us. So we show up, and the day of the race, there's probably 120 people. 20 of the people said that they were going to still do the 100. Some Navy SEAL was there who like gave some hype speech, and he's like, start your watches, go. And I'm like, what? Like there was no any type of like fireworks or anything like that. And so I run the first marathon, and the longest I've run leading up to this was 26 miles. I'd never run over that in my entire life, even in training. 28. And I do the first marathon in 4 hours. And I look at my friend and I'm like, there's no way this takes all day. We hit mile 28, and it was like every single muscle in my body shut down. My feet felt like they had blood in my shoes. My legs shut off, like all like horrific pain. 28 to 40, other than losing my mom in the months that followed, it was the single-handed darkest place I've ever gone to voluntarily in my entire life. At 40, it was like I was fresh again. 40 to 70 went by in a flash, because it was almost my body saying, we know he's not going to quit. We might as well just let him push through. I get to 70. I say, all right, 5 more till 25. I get to 25 and I say, oh shit, I have another marathon to go. It's starting to get late, turns into the middle of the night. It went from, let me also preface, it went from 5 20-mile loops through Brazos Bend National Park to shifted location because of this to Frisco, Texas, which is much colder. And it was 101-mile loops around a church. So you're literally circumnavigating this church for 100 laps. And so it gets to the middle of the night. I have 10 miles left. It's probably 30 degrees. If I walk for too long, I start to fall asleep, or I get too cold, I start to shiver. So I have to keep moving. And I come up with this brilliant idea because my friend lived 3 miles away. I said, because there's no finish line, I'm self-supporting this and tracking this. I'm going to leave at 97 and run home to your house so that when I get to your front yard, I'm done and I can shower and pass out. And I'm pretty sure I started to hallucinate because I packed up my camel pack with a tub of hummus. I put a banana in there and I filled up my water, and I took off down the road of Frisco, Texas at 5 a.m. By myself. No one came with me. Had his garage door opener. That was it. And I get to his house and I was at 97. And I was like, oh shit, I left 3 miles too early. I put my camel pack down in his front yard and by myself circumnavigate his neighborhood from like for an hour. I literally looked at the watch. I go, I have 45 minutes to run 3 miles. I crossed the finish line, so to speak, with, I was 23:45:54. So like 15 minutes to go. And my goal was to break the 24-hour mark. The sun was coming up. I have a video of it I can show you. And I literally look at my watch and I'm in disbelief. I go, oh, I think I say like, holy shit, I did it. Or I said, we did it. Don't even remember. And I remember just like hitting his front yard and collapsing and crying. And it was an example that you are so much more powerful than you give yourself credit for. And it's because of this. And if you commit yourself to something and you say like, I either die or I complete it, chances are you're going to complete it. Long way to say that was one of my bucket list items. If I had to say another one, it would probably be an Ironman.
Awesome. And last question, number 10, what's one thing you do to win the day?
Show up consistently for myself.
There are a bunch of ways to connect with Kevin. We'll link to all of these in the show notes. You can follow him on Instagram at Kevin Wathey, subscribe to his Inputs Only podcast, and visit his website, kevinwathey.com. Again, all of that and more will be linked in the show notes. Brother, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Win the Day podcast. We want to hear your thoughts on what we covered today, so drop a comment on the YouTube version of this episode with your favorite takeaway, any questions you have, or what actions you'll be taking as a result of what was shared in this episode. And if you found value in the Win the Day podcast, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll find a link to both of those in the show notes. It'll only take you a few seconds, and more ratings really helps other people discover the show so they can get the mindset upgrade they need, and we can bring more winners into the Win the Day movement. That's all for this episode. Get out there and win the day. Until next time, onwards and upwards, always.